Right, this thing behind me, not just a cheap carbon bike frame, literally the cheapest disc brake carbon road bike frame that I could find on AliExpress. So is this thing the bargain of the century or is it absolute trash? Yeah, let's figure it out. Right then, ladies and gents, Sirocco are back in with another spicy sponsor spot. So quick summary for you, Sirocco are a Spanish company and they produce some really nice looking cycle clothing that I've worn on every ride for over 2 years now. So the reason I really like Sirocco and the reason I keep having them back here as a sponsor, they produce some really good quality gear. That's great value as well, if you ask me. So for example, these bib shorts here, super comfortable, and the padding is yeah, really nice as well, which is important for me because my saddle is completely carbon fiber. And these things are like 41 quid at the moment. And this jersey here, this thing is 33 quid along with this one. Again, 33 quid. And this thing looks awesome, if you ask me. But autumn is here, at least in the UK. So they've got these arm warmers and leg warmers. So I can still wear the same bibs and jersey, but stay cozy out on the bike during this inclement autumnal weather. Now, one more thing you might also want to check out, they're cycle vests or gilets. So they have these lightweight showerproof ones, which pack up really small when you don't need them, or this one, which I really like. So again, it'll keep the rain off, but it will also keep you nice and warm out on the bike on those colder days. So yeah, if you want to check out Sirocco, use my link in the description down below, save yourself 10% off the entire site, and it'll also help me out a little bit as well. Now, just for a bit of info, these are my stats, so size and weight, and these are my sizes for Sirocco gear that I use. So hopefully that should help you out if you're thinking of getting some stuff. Anyway, enough of that, and let's check out this rather nice looking frame here. Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. Trace Fellow production. My name, as always, is it's Luke. Right then, this thing behind me, it is the bread and butter, the foundation, the very stratum upon which this channel is built, really. Fucking cheap carbon bike frame from AliExpress. Okay then, so I had this frame in my basket on AliExpress for weeks and weeks, and I finally pulled the trigger. So this thing cost me the princely sum of £324.74, or just under 380 bucks. So yeah, this thing is cheap. In fact, accounting for inflation, it's even cheaper than my first carbon road bike frame that I bought for 300 quid back in 2016. Now, in case it's unclear, I bought this thing with my own money. The includes paid promotion banner, which flies out of the top left there. That only relates to the sponsor of the video, so in this case, Sirocco. It's got nothing to do with this frame or anything else in the video, really. Plus, if I do get sent stuff for free to review from companies, I do make a point to very clearly acknowledge it up front for you lot. Anyway, that aside, let me throw some stats at you for this frame. Okay, so this is a 58 centimeter fully carbon fiber Aero road bike frame, this disc brake specific, as I mentioned, and it came pretty well packaged as well, actually, all things considered. There was certainly no damage during transit or anything like that, which was great. So it comes with the frame, the forks, the seat post, and a few kind of finishing bits like the headset bearings and stuff like that. And it weighs in at 1,946 grams. So it's not exactly featherweight per se, but that's not too bad, I think, for a kind of large Aero road bike frame. To give you a bit of context, my TriFox bike frame, which again, 58 centimeter fully carbon frame, it's a slightly more lightweight climbing bike. That was 1,642 grams. So this thing is 300 grams heavier than that, but it's got some kind of nice chunky down tubes and stuff to help cut through the wind. So I don't think it's that bad, actually, all things considered. Anyway, all that aside, let's have a really good look at this frame. Okay, so overall, the frame actually looks pretty decent from a cursory glance, and even when you get up close, it's not exactly a horror show. So the carbon layup looks pretty good for the most part, with a nice consistent weave over the majority of the frame. However, there are areas where you can see the carbon sheets catch the light differently, either because they've been stretched or crumpled slightly in the mold. However, the external surface is yeah, completely smooth, and the overall finish is pretty good. Looking at the BB86 bottom bracket, it's a single one-piece aluminium cup, which is nice. The threading is a little ropey, but I had to go inserting a set of bottom bracket cups, and they went in okay and were pretty centered from what I can see, so could be much worse here. Now the mounts for the front brakes are exposed, and the aluminium inserts are pretty nicely installed from what I can see, plus the threading on the front axle matches up to this aluminium insert in the forks pretty perfectly. Now the headset kit looks fine and all fits up, there's nothing special here, and it's pretty much what you would expect. But the rear brake mounts do look a little rough. Now on decent frames, you would expect this to be nice and flat, maybe even machined flat for consistent brake caliper mounting. However, here you can clearly see, yeah, not particularly flat, which might well cause some brake rubbing issues once I get the calipers installed. Now, 2 final points. The frame also has these darker areas, so you can see the weave is nice and clear here, but then disappears into kind of a blackness in this area. And it also has these little lumps, which are, yeah, they're indicative of rim brake mounts, while this is clearly a disc brake specific frame. Now overall, the frame looks okay, but these last 2 points very clearly indicate how this frame was produced. So let's quickly discuss that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to subscribe and maybe hit the like button as well, that would be amazing. I'm a completely one-man show, and I really put my all into these videos. So yeah, anything you can do to help would be great. Anyway, enough of that, and let's get back to it. Right then, expensive bike frames from top manufacturers. They'll often tout the fact that they're monocoque in construction, and this basically means they came out of the mold in one piece. Now this bike frame behind me, judging by those darker areas that I've literally just mentioned, this thing came out of at least 3 different carbon fiber molds. So the front triangle will have come out of one mold, and then the rear triangle, specifically the seat stay and chainstay tubes, will have been glued onto that afterwards. So for this particular bike frame, to cut the costs from the manufacturing process, they clearly use the same front triangle mold for both rim brake and disc brake versions. Hence the reason you can still see the rim brake mounts that I kind of just showed you. So depending on the rear truss that's glued onto this front triangle, this bike frame can be either rim brake or, in this case, disc brake. Now, gluing 2 separate parts of a frame together like this might seem unsafe, but it's not inherently a problem and is in fact pretty commonplace, actually. So what they'll tend to do is use an overlapping join and then wrap that very tightly with carbon fiber and resin and then let that cure. And in fact, if done properly, the join is potentially stronger than if it was just one continuous tube of carbon fiber, actually. Now, the frame will be a little heavier as a result, but yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not inherently a bad thing that a frame is constructed in this manner. Now, another benefit to this style of construction here is that it will generally result in less rejects from the factory as well. So when carbon fiber comes out of the mold, it can sometimes warp slightly when it's cooling down. Now, if it's a one-piece monocoque frame, yeah, too bad. Chuck it out and start again. However, if it comes out of the mold in several different pieces, like this one here, you can mitigate that to some extent. So you can get the front triangle, secure that tightly in a jig, and then when you're gluing on the rear truss or rear triangle, you can adjust the angle very slightly and kind of true up the front to the back, as it were. Now, you could also argue that as this manufacturing process requires more steps to produce the frame, kind of more room for error, as it were, putting this thing together. So yeah, with that in mind, let's get the endoscope and have a look inside this frame. Okay, so forgive the camera quality here. It's yeah, it's just a tiny camera on a wire, basically. Anyway, we're going into the headset area first, and you can see the layup looks okay around here, but on the back side, yeah, you can see lots of wrinkles. So this is a result of the inflatable bladder they would have used to form the inside of the frame, and also a bit of excess resin. So it looks pretty untidy, and the extra resin will add weight, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the underlying carbon sheets are compromised. But yeah, it's not ideal, really. Right, into the seat tube. So there's the clamping area for the seat post. But as we go down, you can see again excess resin. And if you look around here, there's basically a lip of that excess resin, which actually prevents the seat post from going all the way down past this point, which is, yeah, a little bit annoying. looking. As we go down further, again, more wrinkles from excess resin and that inflated bladder used to form the frame. And further down, the bottle cage and front derailleur hanger riv nuts. Now, you might also see they've added some extra carbon sheets around these riv nuts for extra support, which is, yeah, it's good to see actually. Now, if we continue further down, you can see the bottom bracket area, and yeah, this is a bit rough around here, not gonna lie. So yeah, loads of excess resin, lots of sharp edges, not tidy at all. So for a bit of comparison, here's the same area on my iCan gravel frame, much tidier and cleaner. So yeah, this bottom bracket insert, pretty poorly installed, it has to be said. Okay, so this is the top tube. Looks pretty good actually. It was difficult to get the camera all the way down the tube properly, but yeah, honestly, not much to see. Looks pretty clean. Now, this is the down tube. Again, not much to see here either. The loose white tubes are the cable guide tubes, and there's a touch of excess resin around the edge caused by that air bladder. Now, further down, you can see the bottle cage riv nuts along with their patches of reinforcement, but yeah, not too bad in here at all actually. Finally, this is down one of the seat stay tubes, so looks pretty good. And as I pull the camera out, you might also be able to tell it's actually two separate pieces constructed using that overlapping joint technique. So my final verdict, yeah, could be worse, honestly. Now, admittedly, the bottom bracket insert looks like it may have actually been installed in the White House during that scene from Independence Day. But yeah, that and a bit of excess resin aside, it looks okay. So yeah, if the bottom bracket area stays in place, I'm pretty confident the rest of the frame will be fine. I did a bit of a kind of thorough inspection off camera, and whilst it's not an X-ray of the frame or anything like that, at least it's all carbon fiber. There are no massive voids from what I can see, and the joins look good. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you've spotted anything for yourself. Now, I assume that when a couple of you saw this bike frame here, you noticed that it looked quite similar to the Cipollini, or is it Cipollini NK1K bike frame. And although it does look similar, there are some major differences. So firstly, the Cipollini NK1K is it's a one-piece monocoque frame. This one isn't, as we've discussed. The overall carbon layup on the Cipollini is much nicer and looks much better than this one here. The bottom bracket area looks completely different. It doesn't have the cowling on the headset, which the Cipollini does. The actual measurements and geometry of this frame, at least the ones listed, are different from the NK1K. The edges are also seemingly smoothed off and rounded over on this frame here, I guess to make it a little bit easier to extract it from the mold. And finally, the fixtures and fittings on the Cipollini frame, like the derailleur hangers and the kind of mounts for the disc brakes, are much nicer than this frame here. The ones on here are honestly a little bit rough in some areas. Okay, so from a distance this may look similar, but this is not a Cipollini frame. It's nowhere near the quality. Now, for all I know, it could be infringing on some overall design patent or something like that. But as I've demonstrated, there are several major differences in construction between the two. So this is an open mold, sometimes called an open design frame. It basically means you can find pretty much the same thing from a couple of different manufacturers. So Costello do a version of this frame called their Supersonic, Twitter do one called their T10 Pro, and even TriFox do a version of this frame, their X10. And that one even has the little remnants of rim brake mounts on the frame when it's disc brake, like my one does here. But ultimately, yeah, is this thing safe? And what are my plans for it moving forward? Well, stick around and we'll find out. So the big question here then, is this thing safe? Well, the short answer is I don't know. I mean, there's a limit to what I can do here. I mean, I've given the frame a good once over, and while the inside looks a bit ropey, it seems to be okay, but I'm not a carbon fiber expert. I don't make these for a living. So this could be fine, and I could have a frame that lasts me years and years, or there could be some massive flaw in the carbon that I can't see somewhere. I mean, this is completely no name from some random seller on AliExpress that I've never used before. So it's a complete gamble, is what I'm trying to say to you. And it's important to me that you know that as well. This This is not some secret industry loophole where this is the same frame as the big brands, just without the stickers on. These things are cheap for a reason. There's probably very little quality control for this thing before it leaves the factory, and I assume very little recourse if this thing gets damaged or you injure yourself while using it, something like that. Now, I always get questions from people like, how do I know if I'm gonna get something good quality before I buy it? And with these cheap, ultra budget, no-name bike parts, you don't. As simple as that, really. But having said that, there are definitely a few things you can do to kind of mitigate some of the risk. So for example, this frame, I'm going to be using it for an upcoming bike build, and I've got some really cool bike parts actually. So get subscribed so you don't miss that. But essentially, once it's built, I'm going to be taking it super easy for the first 400-500 miles, something like that. And during that time, I'll be putting this frame through my own kind of quality control process. So bunny hopping off curbs, purposely hitting potholes, basically stressing the frame as much as I can. So if it's gonna fail, it'll fail then while I've kind of got the bike under total control. Only once I'm personally happy with it during that time will I then trust my life to it on some super fast descent, something like that. So I think I've shown with these kind of cheaper alternatives, they definitely can work. But the whole key to this issue is that kind of ultimately the burden of responsibility for your safety is on you and not the manufacturer of stuff like this. So for that reason, I've chosen not to put the seller I used in the video description. I mean, if you really want one of these, they're not difficult to find on AliExpress. Plus, even if this turns out to be absolutely fine, that is no guarantee that the one you get will be. I mean, it would be very easy for me to kind of glamorize this mentality, because I do think high-end bike stuff is ridiculously overpriced. But ultimately, at least the stuff is rigorously tested for safety and you know what you're getting. I mean, my takeaway for this should be a realist, be sensible, and yeah, just be careful. Right, PSA over with. It's now the end of the episode. So yeah, subscribe if you like this kind of stuff. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed this visual and auditory feast for the senses that I've produced for you this evening. And if you've got any questions or comments about this frame or anything that I've discussed, then yeah, leave me a comment and I'll try to get back to as many of you as is feasibly possible for me, as I am just the one man. Right. Anyway, I'm going slightly crazy because it is past midnight and it's a school night as well. I've got work in the morning. I should have been in bed an hour ago at least. These are the sacrifices that I make. Right. Anyway, enough of that. I'm going to go to bed, so I'll see you in the next one. Ciao. I mean, it would be very easy. Oh dear. That's gross, isn't it? Sorry about that.